day would come, but it's rough. Thrasher is passing by, Sin City Thrasher, 709, Debbie Easterwood, Dow Play. Matt Camacho, what up? I am Mechanico 83, a few others. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we knew this day might come, but I just didn't think it would come this soon after Back to the Beginning concert. Hard to put it together. Volbeat Rockers here, the Lunchman is here. Uh, goes without saying, drop a comment and feel free to oh, feel free to drop a comment. Let's see. Let's see what's going on here. One second. All right. Now I should have the sound. You guys good? Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, okay. Technical problems. I need a new USB dongle. That's a problem for another day. Yeah, just bringing the news about the sad passing of Ozzy Osbourne. I'm pretty devastated. I have some personal experiences to share about my time meeting Ozzy and interviewing him. It's the highlight of my entire career as a journalist and just as a fan of heavy metal. And yeah, this is wildly unexpected. That's a little better angle. Man, Element Tattoo, welcome. Good to see you again. Sorry it's for this. I wish it was for anything else. Yeah, this is going to be a hard one. Again, we knew this day would come, just a lot faster than expected. Again, feel free to drop a comment, share your favorite Ozzy songs, Black Sabbath songs, Ozzy moments. Just really in shock. I mean, again, we're gonna lose all our heroes. This is what it is. I often talk about remembering one of my childhood memories is my mom spending a lot of time in the kitchen. It was like her hangout spot where she had like the sort of control center for the whole house. And I remember her listening to her daily radio show, and when somebody was announced that they passed, that she cared for, should be overcome. And a lot of people were sharing their grief. Obviously, this is just devastating. This is just devastating for heavy metal. Ozzy is, an icon of music, an icon of pop culture, transcended rock and metal. And a lot of people know who he is that would not otherwise listen to our music. But, metal is like AA, will take you in any condition at any time. And yeah, this is a hard one. Shout out to my partner Omar at Ghost Cult here, who put up the story first this morning. And I'm already dealing with some personal stuff. I'm going to be okay, but just trials and tribulations of life. Thanks for being here, everybody, whoever is watching on TikTok. The best experience for this is always Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram, but we're also hanging out on the Tick of the Talk. So feel free to drop your comments here, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Come get a tattoo of the King of Darkness. Maybe. Maybe. Just greeting some folks who are passing through. Thank you. I made this little deck for the show with this picture of Ozzy at Ozfest in 2017. I saw 3 of the final Ozzy tours, and Ghost Cult covered like 3 of the last 4 Ozzy festivals and tours. Piercing Metal is here, my good friend Ken. How are you, sir? We just did a roundtable of guests from across metal journalism and a music artist to talk about the Back to the Beginning, good, bad, and different, mostly good. I'm definitely dealing with my grief. I had a little cry earlier. There's been tributes coming out about Ozzy from everybody. I'm I might read some. Some people just shared a photo, others shared their memories, and I'm grateful at a time like this we all have each other at least. Um, but yeah, it's tough. I think the best one I read, obviously, from this family put out a statement on Ozzy's channels, and also Ozzy's publicist, longtime publicist Marcy Rondon of Schneider Rondon Publicity. As long as a Ghost Cult has been around, they've been his publicist, and probably long before that. And they used to do the publicity for all the Ozfests and Ozzy events and things. I think the best one that I read so far, obviously, Iomi wrote right as the news was breaking. I can't believe it. My dear friend Ozzy has passed away only 2 weeks after our show at Villa Park. It's such a heartbreaking news that I can't really find the words. There won't even be another like him. Geezer Bill and myself have lost our brother. My thoughts go out to Sharon and all the Osbourne family. Rest in peace. With some nice photos of them. Geezer posted a nice thing. I don't know if Bill has posted yet. He probably has. It's got to be a shock. The timing of this is a shock. And I don't like giving into rumors, and we don't do a lot of rumors here at Ghost Cult. We try to keep it grounded in reality for everybody that follows us. And, lungs are thinking of an Ozzy tattoo. Nice. Hey, Ken, thank you. Such a sad day indeed. Dustin Sullivan and Eddie O have joined. G. So, just trying to get our brains around this. Like, how did this happen so quickly? We had been hearing from a very credible source in the spring that he was in bad shape physically, and there was some doubt that he could even make it to the concert. But obviously he did. Everybody saw it around the world, and it was, quite the spectacle. I watched it that entire day with my girlfriend, and we continued to watch clips of it all week and all weekend. And we did our reviews here and our recaps and our roundtables. Yeah, Debbie Easterwood says I felt after the last show he can go happy. He did. That was his dream. Ken also said this to me offline earlier. That was like his last wish, was to go out and hear the crowd and perform. And he did. He definitely did. He lived hard. He lived his life at 100, better than most people, until he couldn't anymore. And I'm glad that he's not suffering. It's a heartache and a hardship for your family to watch you, come apart basically as a human being. So it's really hard. But yeah, Ozzy, man, what a loss. And again, I definitely didn't think it would be so soon after this farewell show. Just some minutiae out of the way. Tomorrow night, the Glacially Musical Podcast, which is my other podcast, we'll do some program notes. We'll be doing a live stream, also memorial for Ozzy and Sabbath, and talking about all our favorite things and breaking it down as our podcast likes to do. And I'll be back on Thursday with my weekly rock and metal news show that you guys are all accustomed to seeing here. I was doing the thumbnail earlier, so we'll be back on Thursday for sure. Maybe I'll sneak in one more live stream tomorrow. I had a bunch of live stream topics, but obviously this is going to dominate the news for a while. The death of, just again, I know the word legend and icon are thrown around quite a bit, but there's no question that this applies to Ozzy for all the various reasons. And I think we'll go in reverse order. Obviously got his start with Black Sabbath in 1968. The band invented heavy metal. They have a lasting legacy that can't be fucked with. I was strictly a huge Ozzy fan as a little kid. And I often talk about hearing that first bass note of War Pigs as like a 3 or 4-year-old, just changing my whole life. I understand that people prefer Dio and he's a better technical singer than Ozzy, but Ozzy is responsible for so many things in the heavy metal medium. Just, whether he wrote the words or sang better or not, it doesn't matter. He was there at the beginning. Black Sabbath wanted to scare people with their music, and they absolutely did. And that included Ozzy's voice. And, whatever you want to say about Ozzy not being a great musician, he sure had a great ear for melody, and he sure sang memorable songs that last forever. Mark Badger's here. Hey, Mark, this one bleeping hurts, bro. Right here, man. I'm so hurt. Um, it hurts a lot. I knew this was coming. We just did a live stream about a month ago about the worst deaths in rock and metal. And at that time, I said kind of Dimebag and Lemmy are 1A and 1B for me. And Ozzy is right there. This is probably going to be the hardest one ever. I just, I don't think they didn't owe it to anybody to say he's really bad off, but you could see he was in pain and struggling. And even Geezer was like, I looked over to his eyes and I saw that like there was more in him. He wanted to do more. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to jump around, and you just felt bad for him because you could tell his body would not cooperate. You cried all day about Ozzy, Jessica Nicole. I hear you. It's really hard, and I'm here for all of you. And we're all going to get through this. We're going to grieve. Because of the social media era, we grieve publicly, right? So that's kind of the thing. We all grieve together now, which is weird, but also good because you can reach out to people around the world. Thanks for following, Jessica. I will follow you back when we get off the stream. I follow everybody back that follows Ghost Cult, so I'm very grateful. If you've got a legit profile, if you're just kind of a faceless nobody, or if you are, horrible, then I don't follow you. But most people are decent and good. And metalheads, as I often say, you gotta want to be here. Nobody is a casual fan of this music. So, we'll take it, like they say, back to the beginning. And of course, Ozzy here seen at Ozfest. Like I said, we covered Ozfest Meets Knotfest. We covered Chicago Open Air was one of the last times I saw Ozzy. We covered the New Year's Eve Ozfest in 2018 before Ozzy's health took another turn for the worse. Shout out to Meg Loyal, who covered that for us. And, we have Ozzy the music and we have Ozzy the person. Thank you. I don't know if I can listen to Mama, I'm Coming Home. Jessica, even though that song is actually about Sharon and Ozzy's guilt about being, hurtful to Sharon, that was always a very special song for me. My mother loved that song. She thought it was beautiful. I love that song. My mother's passing is still very hard for me after, almost 30 years ago. And it still hurts a lot. So, it was only recently could I even hear that song or sing it. Usually I host karaoke on the weekends. I couldn't even sing it without crying. I just finally recently got through it enough where I can do it without like breaking down. And, I don't know. I've listened to Ozzy all day since we got the news and since I got up. So just wild. For me, bad. Mark says, for me, the last 20 years losing Dio, Lemmy, and Ozzy has been really bad. It has been really bad. It was hard watching his last performance. It was hard. It's going to be hard for a while. Just a couple of, somebody's here in the comments. Hey, Zach is here. Hold on one second. I'll kill off the banner for ghostcultman.com. And Zach, thanks for being here. My introduction to Black Sabbath was a 1981 adult animated movie classic heavy metal, and Dio came first, Ozzy second. This was 96, and then I did it in reverse order when I was 11. Nice. Thank you for sharing. A lot of people discovered heavy metal because of the movie Heavy Metal and Heavy Metal Magazine. It doesn't get better, Debbie. It doesn't, but, we also have to persist and continue. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Fred Rubb is here. So yeah, just a couple of little housekeeping things. We are not corporately backed, and even though we have some advertising on our website, you can feel free to tip us if you want to. Somebody, I don't know, I feel like all creators do this, and somebody dogged me the other day about asking for money, but like, we need to keep the lights on. That's how this goes. It's not because I love doing this and I will always do this, but it's like no different than having a band to do a music website that's not corporately backed. So it's kind of have being a DIY band. It's all the same vibes I had when I used to, have a band, and I do have a band again for the first time in a long time. But we'll see. Parks and Recs is here. Supplication Metal is here. Thank you for everybody for watching. I appreciate you. But yeah, if you want to throw us some tips, cool. If not, that's okay too. So, we just had the Back to the Beginning and so much Ozzy conversation. And I don't know if people have realized this, but according to Billboard, Paranoid is the number one rock song in the world right now because a whole bunch of people have been streaming it. Um, I don't think Black Sabbath is in the billions club at all on streaming. I know Ozzy has got 800,000 on Crazy Train. Um, I don't think Sabbath has maybe. Let's see. Yeah, one song. Yeah, Paranoid is in the billion. 1.378 billion. So the next nearest closest song they have to that is Iron Man with just under 600,000 streams. So I'm sure it's got 2 billion if you count all of YouTube and Spotify and all this crap. But you know, as great and important as they were never as mainstream or big as some of the other bands. And obviously, they didn't make a lot of money in the 70s because their manager was Sharon's dad, Don Arden, who robbed them of a lot of money. And there's our Cash App if you want to. He's flying high again. Yeah, man, Ozzy. If there's a Valhalla or something, Ozzy is there. So, again, we just had this Black Sabbath concert that was incredible. Ozzy for Ozzy and Sabbath, all these incredible tributes, all this conversation globally. The conversation of metal and Black Sabbath and Ozzy came to the forefront. This was done for charity. That was the way to get everybody, I think, kind of to get in and do it, which is lovely. And it did raise more money than any charity concert in history. That's Fire Aid, Farm Aid, Live Aid, twice. Unbelievable, like an unbelievable thing that they did here. Ken is here and says the contributions from to metal from Ozzy are incalculable. Agreed, my friend. This loss hurts bad, but he's out of pain and rocking with the greats who left before him. I love too many songs to line out. Rip Ozzy. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate you. Everybody, go give our friend Ken a follow on whatever device you're on. When this is over, Turbo is passed by. IMU is passed by. Cure Parkinson's, right? Like, I did around the time of the pandemic, I worked for a nursing home brand that places people in very high end, luxurious senior living communities. Right at the worst time ever during the pandemic when people were dying of COVID and things. And I got to work with, as a marketer, I got to work with Joan London and her team because she's an advocate for dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's because her mother suffered from those things. So there is a lot of research money, Debbie, going toward, curing this, but, it's very cynical to say that Ozzy, might have died anyway younger because of his constitution and how much drugs and alcohol he did, but he's been pretty straight for a very long time. I know that he had kind of a relapse on pills and pain meds and things because of all his various ailments, but yeah, I think it's very cynical to say that. Turbo says, I have this empty feeling in my soul because a legend has passed. Rest in metal. Word. Very nicely said, Turbo. I appreciate you. Um, it's going to be tough for a while. It's going to hurt for a long time. I got to be honest. But like I said, I just did that thing on the worst deaths. This might be the worst, even though he went out triumphantly, which is lovely. And again, that, a lot of people's final memory of Ozzy is a good one. Even though he was in that throne and he was squirming and he couldn't move and he might have been in pain, he really powered through that performance, whatever you want to say. He performed, and it was lovely and a fitting send off. Thanks everybody who's following and liking us. I will follow you back when we get off this stream. I will stay on as long as people want me to, or as long as people are hanging out and conversating. Again, feel free to drop a comment wherever you're watching this from with your favorite Ozzy song, moment, Black Sabbath song, both, one of each, whatever you like. I always talk about my personal favorites. For Sabbath is still War Pigs and Lord of This World, the originals. I talk often about being a very little kid and hearing that first bass note, that bass slide from of War Pigs, and having that change my whole life between Ozzy and Geezer. Pretty Princesses Rip Ozzy. And a bunch of sad faces. Agreed. A lot of people's final memory of this is going to be Ozzy and Black Sabbath having this triumphant moment and all these bands paying tribute to them. The greatest band, maybe one of the greatest concerts of all time. We'll have to, history will tell if it is or not. Live Aid just had the original Live Aid from '85, just passed 40 years last weekend. And a lot of people thought that was the greatest concert of all time, which did feature a Black Sabbath reunion with Ozzy, a Led Zeppelin reunion with Phil Collins on drums, and Deep Purple and many other bands too. Wild shit. Shout out Ozzy has continued even when he couldn't make music the last 5 or 6 years that he talked about on stage being laid up and ill. He continued to dominate pop culture. And, I have to give credit to Sharon. I pick on her an awful lot of times for some of the things she's done that are not favorable, but she really, helped build Ozzy, who grew up in abject poverty, and Black Sabbath really made very little money in the 70s compared to all their other peers and put a lot of it up their nose when they did have money. Ghost Pipe is here. Thomas Burns is here. She really built his brand and built him into a thing that is really, it couldn't happen, riches and wealth, whatever he had and enjoyed, I'm glad he did because he came up with less than nothing. A very tough childhood. Ozzy, a lot of people know Ozzy mostly from Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM and his many podcasts, the Osbournes podcast. We'll talk about the Osbournes in a little bit, and his podcast, with Billy Morrison. And the supergroups were phenomenal. Of course, Black Sabbath is the GOAT. That's true. I think the supergroups were great, except for Billy Corgan and Sammy Hagar was embarrassing. You cannot come up there and not know Flying High again and just think you're going to fake your way through it. And Travis Barker also kind of turned me off with his lack of attention to detail. But what are you going to do? I thought overall the show was wonderful. Sirius, every band has put out a comment or a statement or a tweet. You can check it out. Hey, Concept Cafe is here. We're just hitting here, remembering the life and the music of Ozzy Osbourne. I assume it's Mike that runs the account. What's up, Mike? Thanks for being here. Recent Ghost Cult interviewee. I know that there's potentially an Ozzy album that's done and ready to come out, and I don't know what the timetable was for that. But Ozzy's most recent new music has been these remixes and reimaginations of his work with Billy Morrison on Billy Morrison's album. And there was just a single out with them. Absolutely Farewell, Turbo. Turbo says, in my opinion, there's two concerts that stand out above, Monsters of Rock in 91 and Ozzy's. All right, man. Yeah, Monsters of Rock 91 was probably a huge concert. It's kind of the changing of the guard. Yeah. I'm glad that there's some new music, recent music where Ozzy sounded pretty good or whatever, whatever they did to get him to sound good from a couple of years ago. Again, I do believe there's a third Andrew Watt album that has been worked on. We'll see if that sees the light of day. He's had a bit of a career resurgence even when he couldn't tour anymore before the pandemic. So again, I had seen Ozzy 3 times and he was, pretty solid. And, that you can watch our other, listen to our other podcasts or watch our other videos where we speculated about how much singing Ozzy actually did or not. Mark Anderson's here. Riff Madness has passed by. Hello. Resumed Identity has passed by. So, but he's had a bit of a career resurgence. 2 Grammy-winning albums. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist. I don't really care much about Halls of Fames. We do have a Heavy Metal Hall of Fame now, but I think it's interesting to note that there's only a handful of people who have been inducted more than once into the Hall of Fame. All 4 Beatles as solo artists are in. Stevie Nicks is in twice. Ozzy is obviously one of them, and deservedly so. He absolutely deserved to get in. I had who's the other person? Eric Clapton is in 3 times, but kind of fuck Eric Clapton. And Clyde McPhatter of the Drifters and also as a solo artist, which I think is hella interesting, right? Super interesting. So, Ozzy is one of the few people who have made it that many times. And obviously we had his Sharon has done a masterful job marketing him. Obviously, there was a lot of Ozzy news and stuff surrounding the Back to the Beginning shows, including Ozzy's DNA in cans of Liquid Death, a shameless plug for our friends at Liquid Death, and going for like $450 a can. And maybe they can clone Ozzy and bring him back, or put his DNA into somebody else. Um, Ronnie Radke, if Fallen in Reverse doesn't have a brain, he'd be a good candidate to replace his brain, his damaged brain, with Ozzy's, and then we get like a whole new Ozzy in a new body. It'd be kind of fun. All I seen on here today is his music, and that's what he would want. He absolutely would want. He'd also want us to all listen to the Beatles, especially the later era Beatles, Abbey Road and White Album and stuff like that. He would let it be. He would love that. In my life, I loved you all. Ozzy's cover of that is wonderful, by the way, in case you didn't know. He has a whole covers album. Um, and the two Grammys were very nice. And again, Black Paranoid is the number one song in the world. I wonder if Crazy Train or Mama I'm Coming Home will suddenly become a huge chart hit. It probably will. A lot of people are streaming that song that probably have barely ever heard it. Rockin' 78 says, I saw him in the front row instead of in 05 with Sabbath. One of my favorite shows ever. Word to the Bird. I got to see Ozzy with Sabbath 3 times. Once with Bill Ward and twice with Puffy Borden on drums. Probably my favorite one is Black Sabbath, Pantera, and Deftones in 1999. So it's Deftones on Around the Fur, Not Yet White Pony, or just as White Pony was coming out. And Pantera at the top of Pantera's top, right before Reinventing the Steel, and Sabbath. And they were great. I was in the Brendan Byrne Arena, aka where the Devils play, whatever it's called now. Continental Airlines Arena, maybe it has a different name. I don't know. Somebody help me. That's from New York City. I have no idea. Nugatron Deluxe is here. Jeannie B is passing by. Thank you for being here, everybody. Yeah. And then, again, getting into the Rock Hall and being inducted and having all those people perform. I'm a huge Tool fan, and Maynard, who is, maybe the preeminent singer of this generation, said that, he was intimidated to do Ozzy songs, and he was actually concerned that he couldn't actually hit the notes. Whatever you want to say about Ozzy not being a great singer, he had a great ear for melody. He picked great people to collaborate with. People like Randy Rhoads and Jake E. Lee believed in him, and Zakk Wylde wrote stuff that he could perform. And Ozzy took chances and risks because he had a very good ear for music. I think partially because he was obsessed with the Beatles. So he always heard wild harmonies and melodies and not these typical things you hear in pop music that I'm afraid to say sucks. Most pop music is really like 3 or 4 notes total in whole songs. And Ozzy would take risks and not just hit the octaves, but try adventurous things. That's why it was so hard for people like Axl and Maynard to sing those Ozzy and Black Sabbath songs. He really was underrated, and I'm really glad that he lived long enough to at least get in the Hall of Fame and go have that experience and sit on that throne and thank the crowd and do the Back to the Beginning. And, really interesting to see and have everybody from around the world kind of, pulling together and showing love, because, we just don't have a lot of that. We never had enough of it, honestly. And I'm glad he got to get it in his lifetime and not later, that he didn't live to see it, so yeah. What else? Let's just do, before we talk about Ozfest and the Osbournes, I'm kind of going in reverse order or skipping around. Ozzy put together Blizzard of Oz. He had quit Black Sabbath briefly before Never Say Die to try to do a band called Blizzard of Oz. And he, put out his solo career, and he literally had, I love the Ozzy Behind the Music tells the story, as Sharon says. It was a nothing record deal. Like, it was the only label of the majors that would give him, and gave him the cheapest deal possible, no actual real money, no faith that he would have a hit record. And the record was such a huge hit when Blizzard of Oz came out. Blizzard of Oz, according to Wikipedia, which we know not to fully trust it, but I believe this is true, is one of the few albums among the 100 bestsellers of the 80s to have achieved multi-platinum status without the benefit of a top 40 single. And Bill Ward said, I envied Ozzy's solo career, remarked Bill Ward. He seemed to be coming around whatever he had gone through, and he seemed to be on his way again making records. I envied it because I wanted that, and I was bitter. I had a thoroughly miserable time. So, and yeah, I think Blizzard of Oz went platinum in like 6 to 8 weeks, which is absolutely bananas. Like, it's not done. It wasn't done back then. So, I'm really thrilled. I do feel like Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley and Don Airey have been kind of written out of the Ozzy story, which is sad. And Randy, obviously, rightfully so, gets a lot of the attention. But, there's so many great people that came through Ozzy's band, Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo. And he had wanted Gary Moore, but he wasn't available. And Robert Sarzo almost got the guitar job. Brad Gillis, who I've interviewed, was super interesting to talk to him about his experience with Ozzy. And then Jakey Lee and Joe Holmes is very underrated. Of course, Randy Castillo, Mike Inez, Zach Wilde, Gus G. I mean, so many great guitar players have come through and gotten to work with Ozzy. And then Geezer reunited with Ozzy at one point on his solo career in the 90s. And then obviously Black Sabbath came back a few times, not just occasional one-off shows like 92 and 85 for Live Aid, but then they reformed in 97. I absolutely went crazy going to Ozfest 97. This is one of my favorite things ever. And I mean, this is just an unbelievable, phenomenal show, to be honest. Ozzy with Black Sabbath doing full sets. Unfortunately, Bill Ward could not be there, so it was Iommi and Butler. Bill wasn't back yet. Manson at the hype of Antichrist Superstar, Pantera, phenomenal. Typo Negative, Fear Factory, Machine Head, Powerman 5000. And on the second stage, Downset, Slow Burn, Cold Chamber, Drain STH, who I love, Vision of Disorder, and Neurosis, which is wild. What a wild lineup that was. And it was on Giant Stadium in June of 97, and the field was hot as fuck. It was like 100-something degrees. And I went to quite a few Ozfest, 98, 99, 2000, and a few more, 2003, 2004, 2005. Ozfest was overwhelmingly successful, and I believe it was the Battle for Ozfest show that had the popularity and a little bit of an appearance from Ozzy and Sharon and them that catapulted Ozzy to have the Osbournes. And the Osbournes really, opened up Ozzy to an entire world of people. And I know that people were laughing at him and not so much with him, which does make me sad. But like, you have to admit that like being kind of like crass, pretend evil motherfuckers that suddenly have hundreds of millions of dollars is hilariously funny to see the things that they get into and the things that annoyed them. People love the Osbournes. If you didn't have the Osbournes, arguably a lot of things, reality television, it's the best reality television show probably ever. It's beloved by people who don't know Ozzy's music, which is crazy, but incredible. And it made him wealthy beyond belief, which is, I'm, again, thankful for. He came. If you've ever been poor or lived through poverty, you know that this is an incredible thing. No Pit Photography is here. Rockin'78 just followed us. Thank you, Rockin'78. I'll follow you when we get off here. Guy Bannister is here. Fruitless Pursuit is here. So, the Osbournes really opened things up for Ozzy in a way that I think it was really wonderful for him to kind of cross over to pop culture, Liquid Death, advertisements. I think I had an ad in here. I didn't make it into the deck where they did an ad for he recreated the old Memorex, is it live or is it Memorex ad for PlayStation, right? When it was VR goggles came out. So, I thought that was pretty great. He will live on in other things. Skepsis Recordings is here. Uh, yeah, I get you, Debbie. Randy Rhodes, real sad. Real sad for Randy's passing. Tom is also here. Um, just full of grief, just really sad. Ozzy was, all of our, he was all of our heroes. He really put metal on a pedestal that really can't be touched. His contributions can't be measured, as Ken said earlier. And yeah, not sure what's going on outside, but anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to be rambling on here. There's going to be more tributes from Ghost Cult. There'll be a written post tonight, overnight, talking about his career by one of our writers, Gary from the UK, who was just there at the festival. Um, you know, this is tough, and I really feel like this is the first of many, many of Ozzy's age of guys that are gonna maybe slip away soon. So if I always say, go see your concerts, go now because people are not going to see. I always said I'll see Dimebag Daryl next time, and then he was killed, and I'll see Dio again. I'm lucky to see him, and then he was gone. So like I'm glad Pantera came back the way it is, but like a lot of people never saw the originals. Buy the concert tickets, eat dessert first. Life is very short. Savor it while you're here. My pledge to all of you is work on your happiness. Music is a great relief. Art is a great relief. Toys and memorabilia is a great escape. Movies, whatever your thing is that makes you happy. But really try to find that joy because life is hard and it's just going to get harder and harder as we lose our heroes. And again, I'm Keefy from Ghost Cult. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Feel free to check us out at ghostcultman.com for our full story about Ozzy's life and more Ozzy and Black Sabbath stories to come and more. And, thanks for giving me this opportunity to be here and share this with all of you. It certainly helped me a lot, all of you being here for me. Thank you very much. And I will see you probably tomorrow. Again, tune in to the Glacially Musical podcast, either at Ghost Cult or at Glacially Musical at YouTube, and join us for that. And I'll be back with more stuff for you soon. Rest in power, Ozzy. Thanks to everybody for watching, and I'll see you soon. Peace.